So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we're going over some past GCSE exam questions focusing on some more difficult histogram questions. Now as always, a copy of the test can be downloadable by clicking on the link in the description, and I'll also include some lesson links that go over this topic in greater detail. Now before we get started working through some past exam questions, looking at some more difficult and complex histogram questions, a little reminder that I've included some lesson links that go over this particular topic in greater detail. And also you can access the test paper that we go through in this video as a link in the description as well. So looking at question 1, it says Fiona recorded the number of petals n on 50 varieties of flowers. She drew a histogram to represent the data, and it says that Fiona made some mistakes when drawing her histogram. Write down 2 mistakes that Fiona made. Well, the most glaring mistake that she made was that she plotted the frequency against the frequency density instead of the frequency density. So you could say something along the lines of she plotted frequency instead of frequency density, even though she labelled that on the axes. And another glaring mistake that she made, and this is usually quite common when spotting a particular mistake, is either look at whether they've plotted it correctly, which obviously if they've plotted the wrong thing, that's definitely going to be wrong, and then look at the scale. Now here you can see that with the vertical scale it's going up in 2s, and all of a sudden it jumps to 5. So the mistake is that the vertical scale started increasing by 2 and then 5. Moving on to question 2, it says the histogram shows the waiting times in seconds before calls are answered at a call centre. 32 people waited between 80 and 120 seconds before their call was answered, and the question is asking us to work out the number of people who waited between 20 and 40 seconds for their call to be answered. So with these types of questions, this question is quite repeated throughout this particular topic test, is you're always given information about one. And as you can see, the frequency density column is not been labelled at all. So what we need to do first is find the frequency density scale and then answer what we're wanting to. So using this bit of information that we know, so we know that if we look at the group of 80 to 120, which is this group at the end, so we know that the frequency is 32, and we know that the class width is 40. So then I can then work out what the frequency density is going to be, which is equal to the frequency divided by the class width. So that's going to be 32 divided by 40, which gives me an answer of 0.8. So that means that this last bar goes up to 0.8. So that means that the scale is going up in 0.5. So that's going to be 1.5, that's going to be 2, 2.5 and 3. So from this, the question is asking me to work out the frequency between 20 and 30. So basically it's asking me to work out the frequency of this bar. Now to work out the frequency, that's the frequency density multiplied by the class width. So the frequency density, as you can see here, using the scale is 2.1, and the class width is 40 take away 20, which is 20, and then I just work that out and I get an answer of 42. Moving on to question 3, it says the histogram shows information about the number of houses in every street in a small town. 96 streets in the town had between 30 and 40 houses. Work out the number of streets with 30 or fewer houses. So again, identifying the information that we know, which is 96 streets are in 30 to 40. So if I take 30 to 40 out, if I can actually write it. So we've got 30 to 40. I know that the frequency is 96. The class width is 40 take away 30, which is 10. So therefore the frequency density is going to be 96 divided by 10, which is 9.6. So this column here, so this value here is at 9.6. So by my calculations, every little box of 5 is going up in 1. So 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now that my frequency density has been labelled, the axes, I can now work out 30 or fewer. Now 30 or fewer is basically the area of this bar here and this bar here. So looking at those individually, I've got 0 to 20. Well, the frequency is going to be equal to, and again, just writing down the formula, it's frequency density multiplied by the class width. So 0 to 20, I made that out to be 2.4. So that's 2.4 multiplied by the class width, which is 20. And I get an answer of 48. Then if I just move down to get a bit of space, then 20 to 30, the frequency. Now the height of that bar I make out to be around about 7.2. So it's 7.2 times the class width, which is 10, and that equals 72. So all that's left for me to do is add those two frequencies together, and I get an answer of 120. Then moving on to question 4, it says the histogram below shows the distribution of ages of people in an office. 9 people in the office were aged between 16 and 21. Work out an estimate for the number of people in the office who are over 45 years old. So again, looking at the information that's been given to me, 16 to 21 is this first column here. So 16 to 21, I know the frequency, which is 9, the class width, which is 5, because 21 take away 16. So that means that the frequency density is going to be 9 divided by 5, which gives me an answer of 1.8. So that bar is at 1.8, which then enables me to label the scale. So it's going to be going up. Every little box of 10 going up is going to be 1. So that's 4 and 5. So then from this, I can then use the scale to work out what I'm wanting. Now I'm wanting over 45. Now 45 is here. So what I'm wanting is I'm wanting the area of this pink bar, and then I'm wanting all the area of that last bar. So then color coding this, 45 to 50 is going to be the frequency, is going to be equal to the frequency density, which I make out to be 2. So it's going to be 2 times the width, which is 5. So that's 10. And then from 50 to 80, the frequency, well, I make that out to be around about 0.6. So it's going to be 0.6 times the class width, which is 30, and 0.6 times 30 is 18. So then adding those two numbers up, I get 10 plus 28, which is, 10 plus 18, which is 28. Then says explain why your answer in part A is only estimate. So something along the lines of that we don't know the exact values, the exact ages, and we've basically only got group data. So something along those lines would be good enough for that 1 mark. Then moving on to question 5, it says here is some information about the monthly rent cost of 140 houses in Reigate. It says use the histogram to complete the group frequency table. So for this we need to know that the frequency is equal to the frequency density multiplied by the class width. So working out each of these amounts, so this one here is going to be 0.1 times 400, which gives me an answer of 40. This one here, the second bar, is 0.17 times 300, which is 51. The third bar is 0.08 times 300, which is 24. This fourth bar is 0.06 times 300, which is 18. And then the last one is 0.01 times 700, which is 7. Then moving on to question 5b, it says 25% of the properties do not have a garden. The properties without a garden have the lowest rent prices. Work out an estimate for the highest rent of a property without a garden. So the first thing I need to do is work out what 25% of 140 is going to be, and that gives me an answer of 35. Now what I need to do is I need to find out where the 35th property is going to be and what the rent is of that 35th property. Now looking at the first column, I know that that's got a frequency of 40. So basically my 35th house is going to be somewhere in that bar. So for this, what I need to do is to find out where it is. I need to split this bar into 40 strips. So split the bar into 40 strips. And the reason why it's 40 strips is because the frequency is 40. If the frequency is 25, I'd split up into 25. Now I want the 35th strip. So to do that, now the class width is 900, so try not to get confused with, actually it's 400 rather, with thinking it's 500, because looking at the class width of the table, that there is 400. So it's going to be 400 divided by 40, and that'll give me what one strip is, and then I multiply that by 35, and that gives me an answer of 350. So then all that's left for me to then do is, well, the 35th strip is going to be somewhere, let's say there, probably using the wrong colour, this here, and that distance there is 350. So to work out the rental amount, it's going to be 500 plus 350, which gives me a final answer of 850. Then moving on to question 6, it says that the histogram shows information about the time taken for some people to complete a half marathon. It says 24 people completed the marathon between 2.5 hours and 3 hours. Work out the number of people who completed the marathon in less than 2 hours. So again, using this information and knowing which bar it's talking about, well, this is talking about the fourth bar. So again, the frequency for 2.5 hours to 3 hours. The frequency is 24. The class width is 0.5 because I'm working in hours. So the frequency density is going to be 24 divided by 0.5, which equals 48. So then from this, what I then need to do is work out if this last bar is 48, then basically I can then use that to label the scale, and it's going up in fives, so it's going to be 20, 10 and 0. So from this I can then work out what the frequency density is. Now it says work out the number of people who completed the marathon in less than 2 hours. So I want this green bar and I want this bit here. So then working with the question, then the area of the green bar, which is 1.5 hours to 2 hours, is going to be the frequency is going to be equal, the area of that bar is going to be 30 multiplied by 0.5, which is 15. I then work out the frequency of 0 to 1.5 hours, and the frequency for that is 0.2, I make it, multiplied by the class width, which is 1.5, and that gives me an answer of 3. So then working out the total frequency, it's going to be 15 plus 3, which is 18. So the answer then is 18 people. Then moving on to question 7, it says the table gives information about ages of 66 members of a gym. And question 7a says complete the histogram on the grid to represent the information in the table. So again, what I need to do here is create additional 2 columns. So if I have class width and then frequency density. So the class width is 5, 5, 5, 10 and 20. Then to work out frequency density, it's frequency divided by the class width. So this is going to give me values of 3, 3.4 2.8, 1.2 and 0.4. So all that's left for me to then do is to plot the histogram using the first column and the frequency density using an appropriate scale for the frequency density, which as the highest value is going up to 3.4, I would probably suggest making life a little bit easier, and each little box represents 0.1. So that's going to be 2, that's going to be 1, and that's going to be 0. Then you can either start at 15, which again really would be allowed on the mark scheme, but I would put a little drag mount, so it starts at 15 and then go up in 5. So 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. So it just about fits. Then all that's left for me to do is then plot the histogram. And it should look something like that. Then for question 7b, it says work out the estimate for the median age of the members of the gym. So for this, well, the median, I'll do it over here. Well, the median position that there were a total of 66 people. So it's 66 divided by 2. So I'm looking for the 33rd person. So then if I then go back to the grid, I can see that the 33rd person is going to be just one person into this block. So it's going to be the first person in this group. Because the cumulative total is 15, then it's going to be 32. And so I only need one more person from this 25 to 30. So then from this, what I need is then if that block is, and I'm only needing 1, so that includes, it was 14 people. So then what I'm needing is to divide the class width by 14. So that's going to be 5 divided by 14, which is whatever number it is. So 5 divided by 14 doesn't simplify, so it's just 5/14. And then I need to multiply that by 1, and that gives me an answer of 0.357. So then all I then need to do is add that to 25. So if I add that to 25, I get 25.357, blah, blah, blah. So then the answer then rounded up is going to be 25.3, and that's to 1 decimal place. Now, because you're dealing with people, in terms of age, well, that doesn't have to be a whole number, because you can, it is a bit continuous depending on the scale that you're using. So I would leave it to 1 decimal place. Ignore the pound sign. I don't know what that's going on with there. Moving on to our last question, it says that Ryan collected information about heights of different oak trees. He recorded the information in the histogram below. Show that Ryan collected information about 50 trees. Now for this one, what we need to do is work out the total frequency. So in other words, the frequency of each group and add together. So remember that the frequency is equal to the area of the bar, or the frequency density multiplied by the class width. So working out the area of this bar here, we'll just get a thinner pen. So this one here is going to be 10 times 0.5, which is 5. Then this block here, this one here is going to be 10 times 1.1, which equals 11. This one here is going to be 3.4, or 2.4 rather. Multiplied by 10, which is 24. And this fourth block is going to be 10 times 0.7, which is 7. And this final block is 10 times 0.3, which is 3. So all that's left for me to do is then add all those numbers together. So 5 plus 11 plus 24 plus 7 plus 3 does add up to 50. Question 8b, it then says work out the estimate for the median height of the trees. So again, we're looking at 50 trees. So the median equals 50 over 2. So we're looking for the 25th tree. So going back to our frequencies, we know that it's going to be somewhere in our third block. So looking at this, we've got 16 prior. So if I've got 16 on this side up to here, and I need 25, then I need to borrow 9 from this block. So I need the first 9 from that third block. So here again, looking at the class width, I've got class width of 10, and I've got a total of 24 people. So then if I then divide 10 by 24, then multiply by 9, that gives me an answer of 3.75. So then I need to add 3.75 to that. So then 20 plus, and the reason why it's 20 is because it starts at 20 plus 3.75 gives me an answer of 23.75. And again, we're looking at height and it's in meters. So there is my final answer for B.